Have you no shame, sir? That's how the United Nations human rights chief responded when a Myanmar diplomat recently told the UN his government was committed to the defense of human rights. And those who follow the plight of the Rohingya and the Kachin know differently. Here with us to give us more is Pastor Bob Roberts of Northwood Church in Keller, Texas. He's part of the Faith Coalition to Stop Genocide in Burma. Pastor Roberts, we've reported regularly about the Rohingya, the refugees there, persecuted Muslims, chased out of Burma, now living in Bangladesh. And I know you visited them, so how are they doing and what did you witness?
Well, in October, I actually went to Cox's Bazar and saw the Rohingya and what was going on there. Me and the former ambassador for religious freedom, David Saperstein, along with Majid Mohammed. David is a Jewish rabbi, by the way, and Majid Mohammed. And so together we went and we looked at what was going on there. And obviously we're shocked by what we saw. But I got back home and I started having people say, you know, you're an evangelical, you're a Christian. What about the Kachin? And I'm sorry to say, I didn't know that much about the Kachin, and began to hear a lot of stories about what was going on, that it was difficult, that was challenging. And so I went and I was there for about a week. I was able to get into the Kachin state, and I was able to visit with many of the IDP camps and a lot of the things that were taking place. And I was frankly pretty alarmed by what I saw. And what alarmed me even more so, I was curious how well the Kachin actually understood what had happened in the Rakhine state with the Rohingya, and how similar the beginning of what's going on in the Kachin state was very similar with what was going on with the Rohingya. So I'm very concerned, more than just a little concerned. I'm very concerned about what I see taking place. And I think now's the time to respond to it. For the most part, there's not a lot that can be done anymore with what's taking place with the Rohingya. Obviously, you've still got maybe 400,000 or 500,000 that are left out of the 1.3 million that were there. But you see the exact same things taking place with the Kachin now. So I'm very concerned about it.
I want to ask you first about the Rohingya, because I know it's the largest mass migration of a people group in recent history. So what do you think it's going to take to get them back home?
They don't want to go home. You've got to understand, they had 450 villages that were scorched earth. Basically, I was able to visit with some people with our American embassy there, and the Rohingya that are there are frankly afraid. But it's increasingly difficult for them to leave and get to Bangladesh. So it's quite serious. The conditions at the camp that you see, the largest one in the world, the conditions are horrible, open sewage, and now the monsoon has started. And I had the privilege of getting to visit with Ambassador Brownback now, along with some other groups that are working there. And the great tragedy is when the people went in there, what they did, Gary, they started cutting all the wood down for firewood, and they ran out of wood. So the next thing they started doing was digging the roots out of the ground. And so it's not just the monsoon. Now they're concerned about serious mudslides because there's nothing to hold the ground stable. And so they're literally preparing for hundreds of thousands to die because there's nowhere for them to go. And they're afraid to go back home.
Wow, what a tragedy that is. I guess the reason for us as believers to pray and also do what we can. But of course, as Christians, we have compassion for the Rohingya, but also our audience has concern for the Kachin. So tell us some more about the Kachin. What did you witness when you saw them?
Well, let me just a little bit of background, if I could, on the Kachin. Believe it or not, it's a state where 95% of the people are Christians, and they're primarily Baptists, believe it or not. And so what happened is they're a minority group. They're in the Kachin state, representing about 1.4 million people, similar to what the Rakhine state was with the Rohingya. And so the first response that the Burmese have had is it's more of an ethnic cleansing issue. And over 60 of the churches that have been destroyed, they put Buddhist pagodas on top of those to reclaim it, and so forth. And you've got to understand, these people have a rich heritage. It goes all the way back to the early 1830s. when Adoniram Judson first came. These were some of the first to accept the gospel.
I don't know that the president, that Aung San Suu Kyi, the woman they call the lady, would be complicit in this. Don't you really think it's the military that's behind all this and really in control of Myanmar?
I do. That's my opinion, but I don't know that. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So I can't say for sure, but I'm prone to agree with you. She took such a strong stand throughout her life. And frankly, when I talked to many of the Burmese Baptists that I visited with, that's what they said. They said they felt like she was unable because of the military. Here's something else that alarmed me, Gary. The same units that were doing all the military destruction down in the Rakhine state, they've moved those up to the Kachin state. Now, the problem is when you radicalize and you create such violence among soldiers that have been raping and murder, you just don't turn that switch off. I'm seeing the same thing. I'm seeing 450 villages that have been destroyed, and they're pushing all of these refugees towards the churches in the two major cities. I mean, it's going to be easy pickings for the military if they were to choose to go in.
Well, what can our viewers do then, Bob?
The number one thing I would say is talk to your congressman and your senator. But the problem is, as Westerners, we can't get there for the most part. We can't go volunteer. So the biggest thing that you could do is to send money and resources to the Kachin Baptist Convention because they're there and they're trying to do something. Third, I would say, and this ought to be the first thing, is to pray. They're staying strong in their faith. I mean, they're not compromising. They're not giving up. But it's a very serious issue. This is not a minor thing.
Okay, faith, prayer, action. So Bob Roberts, the Faith Coalition to Stop Genocide in Burma, thanks so much for joining us.
I'm grateful for you taking the time to have us, Gary. Thank you.